Again, welcome to Purpose of this Book with David G. and David G. Thanks for being here, everybody. We are in step 11, and where we left off last week is we are on page 86, paragraph 3, which is the bottom paragraph. And David, you were or were not going to recap anything before we got started?
Yeah, let me do a
Please.
very brief recap, just for fun, because life is fun. So, anyways, so we are in the 11th step, as David pointed out tonight. But prior to that, what we need to know is this is the third inventory in the out of the steps. This is the third one. So the fourth step inventory that we do is the mother of all inventories, and you'll find that on pages 63 through 71. So I'm not going to we don't have time to go through that. But we also have the 10-step inventory, which is emotional sobriety, which is the disciplines that we talked about a couple weeks ago. That was on 84. And then the promises that came along with that were on the bottom of 84 and rolling into 85. But so there's some real and now we're getting into one of the things that Bill points out here that I neglected to point out when we were in this part of the book is on page 85. It talks about in the 10-step promises at the very end, if you want to go to the very first paragraph on page 85, it says it does not exist for us. So instead the problem has been removed, the obsession, the malady, been removed. It does not exist for us. We are neither cocky nor are we afraid. This is our experience. That means it's not a theory. That is how we react so long as we stay in fit spiritual condition. Well, you got to ask yourself a question. What does Bill expect? How does this say in fit spiritual condition? Rest assured your pretty little heads. Bill gives us directions on how to do that. That is what the 11th step looks like. And along with the 10th step and the 11th step and the 12th step, those disciplines, we're going to get into this prayer and meditation. And as we're into it already. We got into it last week. But Bill's giving us prayer and meditation. And let me keep prayer and meditation as simple as I possibly can. Simplicity of prayer and meditation. Prayer is my intention. So I am talking to God. What's my intention in my prayer? Talking to God. And meditation is listening. So for instance, if giving an example of not prayer and meditation, but talking and listening. I've been married 34 years to the same beautiful woman, more in love with her today than ever before. That's by the grace of God, the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous in my life. If I only talk to my wife once a week, and I never listen to my wife, what kind of relationship would that be? That would be a pretty poor relationship, right? So this is about a discipline on a regular basis, and David brought it up in continuance last week. He brought it up because I listened a little bit today of what we talked about last week. And so this is about always talking to God. In my morning meditation, in the evening reviews, is stated on page 86. That's how we started out. When we retire at night, I'm praying, my intention for the prayer. Then I'm going to take this inventory. But I'm also going to meditate. So in the morning on awakening, we think about the 24 hours ahead. So on awakening, so what we want, what God would have me be. That is my thought process here. And then we consider our plans for today. And then it says, before we begin, we ask God to direct our thinking. Then we can start trusting our thinking here. This is the direction that God's giving us, that God is going to tell us his plan for our lives in the form of inspiration and intuitive thought. That's coming up here. That's how I'm going to listen in meditation. He's going to give me intuitive thought. He's going to give me in forms of inspiration. That is if I practice this, if this has got to be a continual practice. So I have this experience here. So that's kind of just what I want to talk about, except for one fact. So it's said here on page 86 in the second paragraph, what we need to have God remove for us, because I don't have the power to do that on my own. Just the same way I didn't have the power to remove my selfishness, my resentment, my fears, my anger. On page 86, second paragraph, and then on the awakening, let us think about 24 hours ahead. We consider our plans for today. Before we begin, this is the first prayer in the 11th step. We ask God to direct our thinking. And then especially second prayer, ask God that be divorced from self-pity, dishonest, and self-seeking motives. That's the second prayer right there, back to back. And the next paragraph is going to give us another prayer. So again, my intentions are in that paragraph is, please God, Divorce me from self-pity, dishonest, and self-seeking motives. That's my intention in my prayer. And now I can sit there and listen because in the next paragraph, God is going to give me inspiration and intuitive thought or decision. So that's all I have there.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, guys, here we go. New content, bottom of 86. In thinking about our day, we may face indecision. We may not be able to determine which course to take. Here we ask God for inspiration, an intuitive thought, or a decision. We relax and take it easy. We don't struggle. We are often surprised how the right answers come after we have tried this for a while. What used to be the hunch or the occasional inspiration gradually becomes a working part of the mind. Being still inexperienced and having just made conscious contact with God, it is not probable that we are going to be inspired at all times. We might pay for this presumption in all sorts of absurd actions and ideas. Nevertheless, we find that our thinking will, as time passes, be more and more on the plane of inspiration. We come to rely upon it. Abby, nothing? Okay.
You want to kick us off there?
Sorry. Yeah,
Go ahead, please.
Yeah, sure. I want to talk about. So again, David did a nice job of putting us, where we are contextually here in the 11th step. And I just want to get plain about the language here, so we're clear with on the surface what Bill's talking about. So we just came out of this paragraph about on awakening, how I'm supposed to, have my time with God and some prayer and meditation and contemplate where the next 24 hours are going to take me. So in thinking about this as I go about this action, I may face indecision, which means, I am unclear how to think or act about something that may come up, right? I may not be able to determine which course to take. So I may be in this state of contemplation where, hopefully I am trying to be with God. I'm saying, okay, here are the things that I've got to do today. I need to make sure that I'm a good husband, and I got to remember to do this thing for Becky. And I've got this tough situation at work. I have to talk to one of my employees, and these sort of heavy things that could come up as I'm considering how I'm going to go through God's world for the day, right? And as a course of this, I may not be able to determine which course to take because perhaps I'm just flummoxed by it, right? Or maybe I've been messing up a lot with how I thought I was supposed to address something in life. So if I'm not clear, if I don't feel like I'm getting this clear message of inspiration, that means I've got to ask God for that inspiration, right? So I'm going to ask him, what does it mean when we ask God? It means pray. And it's how do I pray about something like this? God, I'm really scared about this meeting I have to have with one of my employees today. Can you please give me some guidance? I don't know how to handle it. Why can't I be as plain as that, right? So hopefully then what I get back from God is what's discussed in the second part, in that second clause, which is an intuitive thought or decision. So maybe it occurs to me as I ask. Rarely does that happen in my experience because God rarely works on my timetable, unfortunately. But it's amazing how if I continue with the process and don't allow myself to get wound up, that I start to formulate an approach to something that might be challenging. The idea is that we relax and take it easy. I talk about this all the time. Like I woke up about 4:45 this morning, and I go to the bathroom, right, and then I take the dogs out so that we don't have any peeing mistakes by any animals in this household, including me. And then, I get a cup of coffee and I spent the next hour 45, hour and a half with God, which meant I'm quiet, I'm calm, the TV is not on, I'm not racing around, I'm not looking at any emails or work. I am relaxing and taking it easy, leaving myself open for God to come in and be like, dude, it's going to be okay today. I know you got that tricky situation. Here's how we're going to handle it, right? We are often surprised how the right answers come after we've tried this for a while. After I've tried what for a while? Well, after I've asked God for inspiration and doing so relaxed and taking it easy. Then it goes on to say, well, so first of all, let me note, if you're tracking these kinds of things, oh, also, I'm sorry, I missed this too. We don't struggle. We relax and take it easy. We don't struggle. That means I'm not agonizing over my day. If I'm agonizing in that time, in God's time in the morning, I know exactly how that day is going to go. It's going to go exactly according to David's plan, and things are not going to go well. I have got to ease into my day and allow God to come in so that I have the opportunity to not mess my day up. So then it goes on to say, we are often surprised how the right answers come after we've tried this for a while and mentioned what the this is. And that's a promise, guys, right? Mark it as one. And then here's another promise. What used to be the hunch or the occasional inspiration gradually becomes a working part of the mind. That might be definitely one of them. I don't know if it's my favorite promise in the book, but it's one of them. It means that this crazy dome up here, right? This old.
Uh-oh, he froze. He'll be back. This is typical. Maybe I'm wrong. Okay, I'm going to jump in then. So, because he doesn't come back. So, are you back?
Yeah.
Go ahead, bro.
Internet guy's coming back again tomorrow.
Okay.
Right.
You're on fire too. You're doing good.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Now I'm off the rails, right? All right. Hopefully it'll keep going. Okay. So the great promise here is that as I get better, right, this gradually becomes a working part of my mind. It means God to me is sitting right back here in this right rear quadrant. I don't know why I think he's there, but I always touch this part of my head when I imagine this is where God's coming from. And he's in there, and it's like that still small voice saying, here, take it easy. Here's how we can approach this day. Here's how it's going to go. And then there's an important sort of, I don't know if it's a warning here. Probably you could call it that. Being still in experience and having just made conscious contact with God, it's not probable that we're going to be inspired at all times. This is really the warning. We might pay for that. We might pay for this presumption in all sorts of absurd actions and ideas, which means until I have really gotten to the point that I understand that it's God back in my head here working with me, I am going to make up the words for God's voice.
Frozen again. You guys like the movie Frozen? Here's the other version of it. David's frozen. All right, I'm gonna jump in and
go ahead.
So, okay, sorry, bro. I feel bad for you, dude.
So frustrating.
Hope that guy can do his job tomorrow. Get your internet fixed. We'll pray for you tonight. So, so we've already seen in the prior paragraph about God asking God in the prior paragraph to direct our thinking, and here we're in that same paragraph. We're also asking him to be divorced from self-pity, dishonest, and self-seeking motives. I think for me, when I do those things, when I'm asking God to remove that from my life here, then I'm allowed to do this thinking about the day ahead when we may face indecision. Yes, I'm going to face indecision throughout the day. Everything is not etched in stone. This is the way it works. I'm not a prisoner right now. I haven't been a prisoner in a long, long time. My day is not planned out for me. Like, I have all the freedoms that Alcoholics Anonymous and the Big Book allows me to have in a relationship with God. But it says, here we ask God for inspiration. So my mind is free because I'm not sitting in morbid reflection, as they talk about in the bottom of the 10-step promise, or the 11th step when we retire at night. Because when I walk around full of worry, remorse, and morbid reflections, because I'm thinking of myself. And I can't be available for others when I do that stuff. So when I'm worrying, because when I am worrying, I'm working on self-reliance instead of God reliance. So now I have God reliance. These are our directions. They just flow. This just flows for me. This is how I stay in fit spiritual condition. If I do this, prayers here for me. And then it says, here we ask God for inspiration to have thought or decision. If I sit there and listen the same way as David do, I do the same thing. And we did this, both of us, before we even met each other. I've always done the 3rd step prayer in the morning. I've always done the 7th step prayer, and I do the 11th step prayer. I read a couple meditation books. I sit quietly. I let kind of thoughts come and go. I absolutely talk to God right away. And but my prayer is always for my intention to ask God, what would you have me be today with my job, with my wife, with my kids, with my grandchildren, with my neighbors, with the complete stranger, with the newcomer, with the sponsees that call. And it's really, it's not a so it's is it odd or is it God? Here, the Joe and Charlie statement. I had a sponsor who I've been working with for a couple decades, and he called me today because he's got some things going on, some changes, really positive, good changes, but he's got to make a decision, right? We have to make a decision in three. It's got everything or God is nothing. Why was that decision pretty easy? Because we were taken to our knees. If I do this prayer, if I do this meditation, if I sit there and ask God for inspiration, intuitive thought, I don't know what job he's supposed to take. He's not asking me to take that job because I do not make his decision for him because I am not his God. He has a God as his own understanding. But I told him, relax, take it easy. That's the directions in the book. And then you don't need to struggle. And he asked me, he goes, when you have big decisions to make, you don't struggle? I go, I'm not saying I don't struggle, but I'm aware of this power because it's available to me 24/7 because I make conscious contact with him first thing in the morning. And a lot of times we hear in meetings, and I'm not saying it's wrong. There's a lot of things I hear in meetings that I do say is wrong. Just don't drink and go to meetings. I think that's ridiculous. If I could just not drink and go to meetings, I wouldn't be here tonight because I just wouldn't drink. I can't do that on my own power. But some of the people say things, and again, don't misunderstand me. I can start my day over anytime I want. Of course you can, if you choose to. But how about if you start your day this way, according to the directions in the book, and I'm already got conscious contact with God. I am being inspired. I have intuitive thought and decision throughout my day because I feel the power of God throughout my life. So I don't need to start my day all over again because I haven't really harmed anyone if I did. I have that 10-step spot check inventory that I can rely upon, the what at acronym. And then, as David pointed out, we are often surprised how the right answers come after we try this for a while. Practice. This is a practice. And I'm always surprised. And I'm always grateful too. You know, I had my first sponsor, Chuck M. He used to say to me, he goes, you go to God with intentions and prayer. And then when he answers your prayer, how do you react to that? What do you do in return? And I said, I don't know. And he goes, you ever think about thanking him? It's like, ooh, ouch. Ouch, Chuck. It's like, no, because when I don't thank him, I'm taking credit for it the same way as I think I can take credit for my sobriety. No, that's why God's first, sobriety second, my wife third, my kids fourth, my grandchildren after that, and then my job. And I keep it in a nice, tidy order. Back to the text, page 87. What used to be a hunch and occasional inspiration gradually becomes a working part of the mind. This is change. This is a complete change of my psyche. David pointed it out. Being still inexperienced because I have to practice this so I become experienced with it. I've been doing it for almost 25 years. And having just made conscious contact with God, I have made contact with God. Every day is a new day. I restart my day on my knees, humbly asking God for these things in my life, not because he's an egomaniac, to remind me that he's all powerful. And then it says, we might pay for this. Let me get to the right page. And here's the warning. It says, we might pay for this presumption in all sorts of absurd actions and ideas. I have to be aware of that because if I fill in the blank, if I just assume of something is going to work out this way and it doesn't, then I get a little bit at the bottom of the page. We'll talk about getting agitated or doubtful. I don't have to be that way because I just relax. I take it easy. I don't have to struggle. I know God's got this. As a matter of fact, he's got it so well that God's already in my tomorrow. That's how powerful God is. He's already planning out my day for tomorrow. And then it says on page 87, the next sentence, nevertheless, we find that our thinking will, as time passes, be more and more on the plane of inspiration. This great promise here. We come to rely upon it. I absolutely rely upon this prayer. You know what that is? Because I'm so self-centered. And when I do this work, I get self-centered gets removed, and then I get God-centered.
All right, we'll see if I can keep rolling here. So David picked up a little where I know I was falling off, which is about this warning, right? We might pay for this presumption, all sorts of absurd actions and ideas. And the point I was making at the time when I fell off is before God is truly that working part of my mind, I'm going to start believing he's in there already. And it's amazing how I am going to invent the things that I want God to tell me. So I can make a lot of bad decisions. It sort of gets it back into the fancied or real concept. Is it really God talking to me? Or am I fancying that God is talking to me? We're like, all right, here's how I'm going to handle this business thing. I'm going to go into that conference room. I'm going to overturn the table. I'm going to grab a couple people by their neckties. I mean, I have had these kinds of crazy thoughts. Do you think God really wants me to behave like that? No. Now, these days, do I ever have thoughts like that? Once in a blue moon, but they get squashed down pretty quickly. At the beginning, the way this is describing, of course, I was still batty. I was still crazy, right? God was coming in. God was ready to be there, to be that intuitive part of my mind immediately. He was waiting for me to let him in my whole life. Problem was, I was the bouncer at the door keeping him out, right? So now it's slowly wearing down my prejudices and my old ideas so I can let him in. So nevertheless, we find that our thinking will, as time passes, be more and more on the plane of inspiration. Oh man, like what a wonderful promise, right? That it's just, I'm going to have intuition, inspiration. I'm going to have the seed, the kernel of you know what? I think I know how I'm going to be able to handle this thing. And then the last part, there's another promise. We come to rely upon it. I need to. What does that mean? For me to rely upon this new way of thinking, that's faith, guys, right? What was old faith? Old faith was David outthinks or outmuscles or outruns everything. I make all the decisions. I am all powerful. I am all brilliant. I run the show. And as I learned painfully, none of that was true. But I still had faith in it for a long time. That was my faith system. So now I'm getting introduced to a new sense of faith where I am praying, I am meditating, I am allowing myself to get close to God instead of holding him away at arm's length or further. And because of that, I'm getting rewarded. I'm getting promises. I'm not saying stupid things. I'm not doing stupid things. I'm relaxing and take it easy. I'm not so tensed, right? I don't have that feeling in my chest, right? You guys know what that stress, tense, tightness, right? I don't have that. So now I come to rely upon it. I have faith that if I do this every day, if I in the morning, am I thorough and honest with my morning practice? Do I always allow time with God? I mean, guys, it's so important to me. Even if I have like a crazy early flight and I got to get up, and be at the leave for the airport or be at the airport, I'll get up at 2 a.m. I mean, David gets up at 2 a.m. every day, so it doesn't sound like a big deal to him. But for me or most of us, getting up at 2 a.m., holy cow, right? I mean, you guys in the UK are going to be up till 2 tonight. But, I get up to make sure I've got at least a half an hour, if not an hour on one of those crazy days. I cannot sprint into my day without starting it with God. I just can't. It is too much riding on it, right? I got to make sure that I'm marching to fit myself to be maximum service to God and all his kids. And if I can't find a half an hour to do that, sacrifice a little sleep, am I really doing everything I can do? Mm-hmm. Circle back or move on?
No, I'm fine. Thank you.
Okay. Next paragraph. We usually conclude the period of meditation with a prayer that we be shown all through the day what our next step is to be. Man, I have so many lines in here, guys. That we be given, I've got too much writing here. I can't, that we be given whatever we need to take care of such problems. We ask especially for freedom from self-will and are careful to make no request for ourselves only. We may ask for ourselves, however, if others will be helped. We are careful never to pray for our own selfish acts. Many of us have wasted a lot of time doing that, and it doesn't work. You can easily see why. Abby, anything in that one? No? Here's my terrible joke that I tell every time. I pray for my wife to win the lottery. Right? I'm not praying for me to win the lottery. I'm praying for my wife. She's just going to share it with me. Right? I don't know. That's my terrible AA joke of the day. Go ahead, David.
I think my wife might come to her senses and just leave me and not tell me she won the lottery. I don't want her to win the lottery. Anyways, so this again is part of prayer and meditation. We usually conclude this prayer of meditation, listening to God, with a prayer. So again, we're going back to prayer again. This is my direction that we be shown all through today. That here's what I say: that I be given whatever I need to take care of the task at hand, whatever that is. Whatever that next thing is that God puts in my path. Right? God has never given me anything that Him and I can't handle together. Yes, I've reached out to you for counsel. Yes, I incorporate my sponsor, my running buddies like David, RJ. We talked for quite a lot on the phone today. These are the things that the gifts of sobriety, and they come in abundance. Oh, they come in abundance. The Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous, Cocaine Anonymous, it comes in abundance. I am not alone anymore. That first step that says the only time I felt alone was the first meeting I went to. And when I was welcome right away and I got a sponsor the very first night I went to a meeting, I never felt alone after that period of time. As long as I got from fear, took a step to courage, reached out and asked you for help. And then I started having faith that when I ask you for help, when two or more of us are gathered together, God is present. That has been my experience ever since. So I don't struggle with that. But I had to be shown all through the day because the day is long sometimes. Again, like David said, I started at 2:00 this morning. I'll finish my shower in another hour from now and off the bed and do it all over again. All my choice. Sleep is overrated. I'll sleep when they're patting dirt on my face. It's okay. I run on adrenaline all day long. It's all good. And so to be shown what my next step will be in each individual case. We ask especially, here's another prayer. We ask especially for freedom from self-will. Boy, do I need that one, because I want things done my way. Where are you at? Why are you not on time? I have a meeting, some of my people don't show up on time. I'm 10 minutes early. That's the kind of the mantra that I always use. I show up 10 minutes early for a meeting, but no one else got the memo, I guess, because I didn't send it. And it's just like, so they show up 10 minutes late. It's okay. It's all right. I don't have to get upset about it. I don't have to get disturbed. It doesn't have to bother me. The meaning is maybe the meeting worked out just the way it had to work out because people needed to be 10 minutes late. I have to look at the bigger picture here because what I'm asking for is give me the power to enrich the task at hand. And then it says we may ask. It says, and be careful no request for ourselves. And I think that's so obvious not to pray for my own self here. The only time I pray for myself is right before this meeting, right before I do a talk on Zoom, right before I go to work, right before I walk into an office building and I open up the door, I let God walk in first. These are the things that are my practices throughout the day because I'm always inviting God into everything. Just before RJ and I talked today, I said a little prayer. Ask God to come in so I'd be a better listener. I don't need to dominate the conversation, and this is the relationship that I'm trying to build with other people because this is throughout my day to be shown what actions and what He would have me be. And it says, we are careful never to pray for our own selfish ends. Many of us have wasted a lot of time doing that. And mainly when I did that was all foxhole prayers, right? David brought this up at our live meeting, our home group that we go to Monday night. Foxhole prayers, and everyone nods, right? Yeah, get me out of this jail cell, out of this holding cell, and somebody bond me out tonight. And God, I'm making a deal with you. I'll never do this again. And tomorrow night, pouring a drink down my throat again, right? Why? No power, no choice, no control. And untreated alcoholism, I pick up again. So the bottom line here in that second to last sentence is many of us wasted a lot of time doing that. And it doesn't work. That's pretty black and white. That's all I got there.
Yeah, I'll just, David did a really nice job there. I'll just underscore, a couple of points here. So there's direction here. Usually conclude the period of meditation with a prayer. Would be shown through the day what our next step is to be. And, so basically say, and I'm not sure that I don't conclude the period of it that way because I really start with the prayer, and then when I do that, then as I get into the meditation and contemplation, I feel like the prayer sort of gets me going and sets the groundwork. So I'm not trying to be contrarian. Maybe I will add a prayer at the end to pray it out too. But the point is that for me, the whole effort, the whole exercise, the whole sort of reaching out to be in greater conscious contact with God is about being shown throughout the day what my next step, what my many next steps are to be, and that God give me what I need to take care of those problems. Again, all of this under the umbrella of fitting myself to be of maximum service to God and all his kids. So as I'm thinking about some of those tricky things that might come up, am I thinking about self, which we're being warned about here? Am I thinking about self-will, or about being the actor trying to run the show? Am I thinking about my pocketbook, right? Am I thinking about my prestige or pride in the workplace? How is that going to help any of you guys? It's not, right? So how do I ask God to help reframe me going through life, doing the things I need to do as a husband and a friend and a boss and a colleague and a son and a brother and a neighbor and all these things? How do I go through the roles in life while serving God and all you guys? So I've got to ask, especially for freedom from self-will. I just basically have to ask for freedom from self-anything. Self-will, self-pity, self-seeking, selfishness, self-centeredness, self, right? Self-aggrandizing. And I'll be careful to make no requests for ourselves only. And David made a list of the times that he does pray for himself. And I would argue that, David, that's not you praying for yourself. That's fitting yourself to be a maximum service to God and the people about you, because everything you talked about was going in interactions with all of God's kids, right? That is me praying. That is David praying. That is all of us praying, saying, please, God, help me when I walk out the door or when I get on the phone from my desk here, that I don't screw up everything you've given me, that I keep this momentum and I keep this service to you. We may ask for ourselves, whoever, others will be helped. David talked nicely about that. We're careful never to pray for our own selfish ends. Many of us have wasted a lot of time doing that, and it doesn't work. You can easily see why. How can I easily see why that praying for my own selfish ends doesn't work? Because I was told 24 pages ago, selfishness is what's killing me. That selfishness is the root of all of my problems. So why now, in my growing relationship and awareness of God and trying to get him to be a working part of my mind, how could I formulate that anything based on self is going to serve him and you guys? It's not. It's the opposite, right? Gotta let all that self stuff go. I ought not be in a place of making foxhole prayers anymore, right? Asking God to help me through a jam, sure, if it's going to fit me to be of maximum service to him and to you guys. That's the only way this goes. God, I'd rather not go to prison so I can stay outside here, right? Carrying the message. Right? Dave, you guys have probably heard David talk about this a bunch of times, right? Or whatever our situation is. Our buddy Eddie, who's here in the Chicago area, I think he just had 3 years and 18 months ago at cancer of the bladder and cancer of the kidney, and had to get one of those kidneys removed. And he has 2 or 3 cancer surgeries. And the guy is just so spiritual. He's like, I think God is getting me through this stuff so I can continue to serve him. I mean, he's been so amazing about this. And he says, and if God calls me home, that's okay too. God is calling the shots, and he's not being morbid about it. He is so positive. And this all started, he was 18 months sober at the time. And I used to sponsor him. Woo, his story. I know his story well. And this guy, with God flowing through him, is just a beacon. I don't know, 20 years, I would have handled it as spiritually as he did. But he has been just such an amazing living example. This is the point. God, please help me get through this cancer. Why? So I can keep serving you. That's the prayer for me. But it's still about fitting myself to be a service to God and you guys. Please keep me on this planet, because I got more alcoholics and addicts to help, right? Not please keep me on this planet so I can get that savings account a little bigger. God's not terribly interested in that. Moving on.
Yes, please.
Okay. Paragraph 2 on 87. If circumstances warrant, we ask our wives or friends to join us in morning meditation. If we belong to a religious denomination which requires a definite morning devotion, we attend to that also. If not members of religious bodies, we sometimes select and memorize a few set prayers which emphasize the principles we've been discussing. There are many helpful books also. Suggestions about these may be obtained from one's priest, minister, or rabbi. Be quick to see where religious people are right. Make use of what they offer. Go ahead. Oh, Abby.
Yep. I have devotion and principles. Devotion is prayers, especially for private worship. And principles are basic doctrine or rule, one or all the rules of morality.
So Bill's had a change of heart, of mind, and soul, right? Everything internally has changed. The same experience that we're going to have here. Again, it's not a theory, it's experience. So when David's reading this here, it says, if circumstances warrant, we ask our wives or friends to join us in morning meditation. So my wife's not getting up at 2 a.m. to do that with me. She does not need to do that. And I've never asked her to do that. She has said, I get up and make you breakfast if you wanted to, but I don't eat breakfast right when I get up. So, but thoughtful is I'll get out. If we belong to a religious denomination that requires a definite morning devotion, we attend to that also. I circle the word also there, not in place of Alcoholics Anonymous, Cocaine Anonymous, OA, DA, whatever A, not in place of, because I had a very good friend who stopped going to meetings, did not drink. We were coaching our kids in softball when they were very young. And oh my gosh, he forgot the water jug for the game, and he was going to church. And he was very, very involved. And he loved this guy. He actually passed away with 17 years of sobriety from cancer quickly, but just a wonderful guy and a demonstration in my life. And but he was so irritable, restless, and discontent because in place of, he started going to church. And I'm not saying that happens for everybody, but I think the word also needs to be circled for me because I need to do this. I can go to church, but I also need to remember that I'm a real alcoholic. And these are my directions on how to have a spiritual awakening, which is the only thing that we have to offer here anyways, which is a wonderful thing to get. And if we're not members of a religious body, we sometimes select and memorize a few set prayers. I pointed that out. 3rd step, 7th step, 11th step prayer. I memorized them. I know them all by heart. You know, my sponsor and I both take our time and read through the prayers. Like and I don't do this all the time, but I will, while I'm reading it, I read every sentence because I memorized it. I know the whole 11th step prayer. I memorized it. But if I'm just going through the motions, I'm not really connecting to the prayer, and I need to connect to that prayer. So anyways, then it says there are many helpful books also. So there's plenty of books to read. As a matter of fact, this happened to me in my 24th year of sobriety. A guy came into my life. I'm not going to give the whole backstory because it's relevant, but it's not what we're doing here tonight. And he's a religious guy who does the Bible like anybody's business that does the big book. And he asked me if I would be willing to go through some scripture. And if you would have asked me to do that at 15 years of sobriety or 20, I don't know that I would have said yes. But intuitive thought and decision said, I would love to do that with you, Mike. I do it at 8 o'clock on Friday mornings. I don't get up at 2 on Fridays. And I do it on Zoom with him. He's in Texas, East Texas. And he takes me through the scriptures. Is it odd or is it God? Right? So anyway, and we go slower than this even, really slow. So anyways, there are many helpful books. And actually, I know the minister I've been to dinner with him that lives in my neighborhood. So, dude, I'm opening my mind. My mind is not snapped shut. Let's just see where we go, but not in place of. Okay. So be quick to see where religious people are right. I underline the word right because they are also demonstrations in my life today, and make use of what they have to offer. Again, Mike, the guy who does the scriptures with me, he has so much to offer. He's so well schooled in it. Been doing it. He's 10 years older than me. Been doing it for a very long time. I have places in the book I could go to where Bill was closed-minded. It's in Bill's story on page 10 in the 4th paragraph. Bill's mind snapped shut to all this stuff. You know, he just was not willing to open up his mind to any religious stuff because that's all he had. But in our set aside prayer, we're talking about let go of some of our old ideas. And maybe religious people are right. Maybe they are. The book says they are. So maybe they are right. So I'm open to allow them to come into my life and direct me down a path that I didn't even know existed. And if it benefits other people and God, I'm going for it here, guys, because I need to get out of self more and more and more all the time. Less David, more God. And if that's the directions you got me going, not in place of, but along with, I'm willing to do whatever it takes here. Willingness to go to any lengths means opening my mind to whatever God would have me be. Go ahead, David.
Yeah, I'll just say a little, and then I realized we should just try to wrap up the chapter tonight, looking at the time and where we are here. So, yeah.
Okay.
So if circumstances warrant, we ask our wiser friends to join us in morning meditation. Well, circumstances warrant in this household because my wife is in her 18th year of recovery in AA also. But you know what? Even though circumstances warrant, we typically do our own thing in the morning. We both get up at 5 a.m. I go in the other room with some coffee and 2 or 3 of the dogs, and she usually stays in the bedroom with some coffee and the other, 3, 4 dogs. And we both have our morning time with God, and it's quiet. She does the same thing. We both ease into our day. Could we do this together? Yeah. But we just sort of organically figured out we like having the time alone in the morning, and then we, as the day gets going, then we start spending time together. If we belong to religious denominations, requires a definite morning devotion. We attend to that also. That's a must, guys. If I'm saying that I'm practicing some sort of organized religion, a faith-based system that has a morning devotion, then Bill's basically saying, hey, honor that, right? But as David talked about at great length, in addition to what we're doing here as a part of our spiritual practice in AA, CA, OA, etc. Not members of religious bodies, you sometimes select to memorize a few set prayers. We talked about that, saying the 3, 7, and 11, and that's what I encourage new guys that I work with to do. Figure out your own prayers, great, whatever. But to get started, here's what I did, and here's what I do. And then there are many helpful books. Also, love listening. We bring him up all the time. Mark Houston, he's passed away. One of my favorite speakers of all time on the book and on recovery. And he brings a lot of these great different spiritual books, 365 Tao and some other great stuff. And he gets the best stories and parables and stuff out of them. Open our minds, guys, right? And if you don't, here back in 1939, we had to ask a priest, a minister, a rabbi. Now we just ask Google. Show me a list of great spiritual books about blah, blah, blah. And you're going to have more than you ever need. And guess what? They're going to be free, most of them online too. And be quick to see where religious people are right. Make use of what they have to offer. 5 or so years into recovery. This shows you how much I always still have to learn. 5 or so years into recovery, maybe even longer, I went out to see some family in Baltimore, Maryland, where my aunt and uncle are Orthodox Jews, so the highest form of religious observance in Judaism. And I was borrowing my my aunt's car to go, I don't know, run an errand. I got in, and the tape she was listening to started playing. Maybe it was longer ago because it was a cassette. And it was like a rabbi talking about, spirituality stuff out of the Old Testament. And I snorted and laughed. I'm like, oh man, I can't believe she listens to this. And then I was like, wait a minute. Like I was listening to Joe and Charlie before I got in the car, right? So it's like these old ideas about your spirituality and religion is wrong. My spirituality is right. It's all poppycock, right? Like, please make sure to see where religious people are right. They've been in faith longer than me. Do I have to agree with all of it? No, that's not what it says. It just says, see where they're right. Moving on. Ooh, underline or highlight this one, guys. As we go through the day, we pause when agitated or doubtful and ask for the right thought or action. We constantly remind ourselves we are no longer running the show, humbly saying to ourselves many times each day, thy will be done. We are then in much less danger of excitement, fear, anger, worry, self-pity, or foolish decisions. We become much more efficient. We do not tire so easily. We're not burning up energy foolishly as we did when we were trying to arrange life to suit ourselves. So I just want to ask one question, and then I'll let David start us. I want to go back to that first line. As we go through the day, we pause when agitated or doubtful and ask for the right thought or action. Does that sound like direction? Like that's what we're directed to do? Let me ask you this. What if that's a promise? What if, as a result of this work, guys, as we go through the day, we pause? We are paused. Maybe God pauses us because that intuitive thinking, that working part of my mind is saying, uh-oh, you're about to veer, David. How about you hold your lips? How about you hold your feet? Now, listen, it could be both. But I love thinking about this as a result, as a promise that I'm not gonna. It's like those 10-step promises, right? I'm not avoiding or I'm not avoiding temptation or fighting alcohol. It's like here, I'm not avoiding saying or doing the wrong thing. I'm being paused. I'm being prevented before I can cause more problems that I'm then going to have to turn around and probably address in a 10th or 11th step. Go ahead, David. Or I'm sorry, Abby, did you have anything in this one? I jumped right in. Okay. Go ahead, David.
Yeah, as David pointed out, as we go through the day, we pause. So I'm going to put numbers against these directions. I think they're directions, and I think they're great promises because this is a part of the practice that I'm going to still. But the pause is my first one. Pause when agitated or doubtful. That's the number one thing that I'm going to do. And oh, by the way, agitation comes long before anger and rage. Long before anger and rage, right? Anyone else identify with anger and rage? I do. Yeah, not so much anymore, but I'm just saying. And then it says, then the second direction is we ask for the right thought or action. So we're praying for the knowledge and the power here. Ask for the right thought and action. So that's my prayer. That's my direction. When I'm agitated or doubtful, that's when I'm pausing. And then we constantly remind ourselves we are no longer running the show. Oh, I missed one. Sorry. Back to the bottom, page 87.3. We constantly remind the third direction. Remind ourselves we are no longer running the show. That's the third direction on that page, running the show. And then humbly saying, this is the fourth one, humbly saying, circle the word saying to ourselves many times each day, thy will be done. 4 directions, one simple paragraph. That's what Bill's trying to tell us here. So one thing I have to go is the bottom of page 87, third paragraph, that last one there. We constantly remind ourselves we're no longer running the show. Oh, gee whiz, that kind of reminds me of in how it works on page 63, 62 on in the third paragraph. Try to wrap this up tonight. We will. So it says, many of us, or this is the how and the why of it. First of all, we had to quit playing God. Why? Why did I quit playing God? Seems to work really good in my life. Everybody, little soldiers line up. Oh, Bill tells us why. It doesn't work. That's why. Bill tells us it didn't work. Next, we decided, and hereafter in this drama of life, my drama that I created because my troubles are my own making, back up 2 paragraphs, God was going to be our director, one who's in charge of an activity. God is in charge of my activities throughout the day. And then he is our principal, first in order of importance. That's God, the principal, first in order of importance. We are his agents, a person who acts upon another. God is making us an agent. Cameron F. does this. I've heard him do this talk many times. He wishes he had a business card. Maybe he does. You go up to a newcomer at a meeting and go, hi, I'm Cameron F., or in my case, I'm David G., agent of God, and hand him your business card. Because that's what we are. We're agents of God. Come on. Believe it and know it. We are armed with the facts about ourselves. We can do this. It's a little bit egotistical, possibly, and they won't get it, the joke, but you guys do. So, and then it says, he is our father. So a father is a man in relationship to his natural child. God has no grandchildren. We're all children of God. And then, and we are his children. So we know what a child is here. I'm not going to go through the rest of the paragraph there, but back to the text here on page 88, we are there much less danger of excitement. Excitement is short-lived, guys. I want to be happy, joyous, and free. That means that permanent sobriety, not living in alcoholism and the bedevilments, because the bedevilments are on page 52. The 9-step observations or promises are on page 83 and 84. So 31 short pages from the work that I did on 52, finding out how manageable my life is. My life becomes more manageable by the time I get to the 9th step here. And basically, and then, we are then in much less danger of excitement. So if I do those 4 things, I'm much less danger of excitement, fear, anger, worry, self-pity, or foolish decisions. We become more efficient. Why do we need to be more efficient? Okay, one last time. I feel like page F. We're going to bounce around the book a little bit. Page 77, third sentence, I believe it is. Yes, third sentence. Our real purpose is to fit ourselves to be of maximum service to God and people about us. That's purpose. That's usefulness. That's something I get to experience all the time today. So I'm more efficient. I don't tire so easy, not burning up energy foolishly as we did when we were trying to arrange life to suit ourselves. I'm not going to go back to page 62 and talk about being the director, the lighting set, and all that stuff. You know what I'm talking about. We did this already. I'm not pushing the world around any longer. And then it says, David didn't read it, but it says, it works. It really does. If I do those practices. Good, David.
Yeah, well, I won't double down on too much of what David said. I was just thinking it would not be Jedi David if I didn't occasionally bring up a couple of great expressions from my spiritual guru, Yoda. Right? So here, what is Bill telling us just a few years before Yoda, right? We are then in much less danger of excitement, fear, anger, worry, self-pity, or foolish decisions. What does Yoda tell Luke? He says, adventure, excitement. A Jedi seeks not these things, right? I'm getting to the point in my life. I don't want to be in chaos. I don't want Did I used to love it? Oh, it was my lifeblood along with alcohol and cocaine. I so desperately needed the adventure and the excitement and the hyper, right? But now I need to be cool because I have to fit myself to be of maximum service to God and all his kids. So the fitting myself is going into the day. The whole point of what we're talking about here in 11 saying, how do I exist, God? How do I get into life and really live the way that you need me to? How do I place myself? How do I fit myself into that? Right? And these things, fear and anger, like we know the destructiveness. Yoda also says fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, hate leads to suffering. Right? How much suffering did I cause? We've studied the harms in this book, guys. What did we do to the people about us? We're about to get into the chapter working with others, and some of the family stuff comes up in there, but then when we're beyond that, we're going to be studying some harms and be revisited, right? In the chapter to wives and the family afterwards. We're going to hear a lot more, even though we're not the target audience of the chapters. We're going to be reminded of all the suffering we cause, and that's okay. Again, this is not about self-flagellation. It's not about constantly beating ourselves up, but it is recognizing where we erred in the past so that we don't have to be that person anymore. That's the beauty of these inventories. Oh, God, that was wrong. Please help me not do that again. You know? And I love it works. It really does. Yeah, our buddy Babe K, I'm sure a bunch of you guys know that. I was in a meeting with him one time, and he was a speaker, and they're like, Babe, you pick a passage from the book and then do a 10-minute lead on it. He's like, page 88. It works. It really does. That's it. But what a great passage to choose. What do we need to say? Just 5 words. And that's also a microcosm for our entire 12-step program recovery. It works. It really does. If what? I do it thoroughly, I do it honestly, and I keep doing it. There is no failure if that's my approach. And here's our big finish. We alcoholics are undisciplined. Woof. So we let God discipline us in the simple way we have just outlined. But this is not all. There is action and more action. Faith without works is dead. The next chapter is entirely devoted to step 12. Have anything? No? Okay. So, guys, why are we undisciplined? Well, because we're used to living in excitement, fear, anger, worry, self-pity, and foolish decision making. Right? That's the MO. That's the approach to life. Right? There was no spirituality. We're terribly undisciplined when we are living in those states. We got to let God discipline us in the simple way we've just outlined. What's the simple way? Wake up with God, spend some earnest time with him, wrap my day with God, spend a little time, do a little inventory, and spend all day with God, intend to taking advantage of those spot check inventories. But This is not just a practice of prayer and meditation. Right? My feet got to be moving. What's my action? There's action and more action. I love that. Now it feels like it's like Bill's cracking the whip. Action, more action. Faith without works is dead. I got to be nimble. I got to be moving. And then sneak preview, the next chapter is entirely devoted to step 12. And really, the following chapters are principally about step 12 too, as you'll find out if you keep studying.
Yeah, so I don't know how Bill knew, but we alcoholics are undisciplined. Probably because he was an alcoholic. We are, but that's what we just learned. If we learn, so we let God discipline us in the simple way we just outlined. What was that? Pages 84 all the way up to page 88 here. This is the disciplines I live with every day if I want to be free of the bondage of self and then be of maximum service to God and all his kids. That's how this works for me. And then it says, but this is not all. There's action and more action. So just about the time where you think you can start resting on your laurels, take a little breather here. No, more action and a lot more action. Because faith without works is dead. Real briefly, Dr. Bob in the Oxford group had plenty of faith, had plenty of religion, had all this stuff, but he had no program of action, no practical program of action until Bill came into his life. And luckily, Bill had met Silkworth prior to that and said, don't come at them with the religious avenue. Don't do that. Come with the knowing about the facts about the disease of alcoholism, that once I put it in my body, I break out in craving. Once I stop, I cannot stay stopped. Because if he went to Bob with the religious avenue, Bob would have buried him because he knew way more about religion than Bill did. But he didn't. He waited the right approach. So faith without work. So then Bob did the work. Bill got sober. Bob got sober. Ebby prior to Bill, and so on and so forth. And we are all here today because of those guys. And the next chapter, as David pointed out, is entirely devoted to step 12. That's true to some degree. This 12 step is broken down into 3 parts. Having had a spiritual awakening is all these steps. Yes, indeed. That is very true. That is a great promise. We try to carry this message to alcoholics. That part of it is going to be the direction they're going to give us and how to carry this message, which is the charge for having this awakening. But to practice these principles in all my affairs, they don't really give us a lot of direction in the chapter of working with others. But as David pointed out, the next 3 chapters after that, we have to look for it, but it's there. So anyways, looking forward to doing that. 8 o'clock on the button. God bless you guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.